The reason why I started 12 Geniuses and started to have these really interesting conversations is because I worked with a guy who was in his 50s, and I asked him what he wanted to do, and he said exactly what I did the last 20 years, but for the next 10 years. And I said, that doesn't work. That's just not going to happen. And he wasn't willing to change. And I just saw how that, really impacted his ability to continue his career. And that was very unfortunate. No, he was really close to me. And so that's my concern for humanity.
Oh, I mean, Futureshock is a real thing. And it's going to be so much worse this time because the boomers are so self-satisfied, self-absorbed, and stuck in their ways. So this entire generation, my age, 5 years younger, 10 years older, all of us are going to fight this. And it's going to be messy because status changes, affiliation changes. Talking about it the way you and I are talking about it helps. But what is really going to help is if we build the scaffolding and the on-ramps and the steps, the same way we saw, when the internet made newspapers irrelevant, it took a decade for news to shift. But the people who cared about news at least knew what they needed to do next. And right now, because the change agent is so fast and so sudden, the scaffolding isn't built yet. And that's a great opportunity for someone who wants to contribute.
And I think from a leadership perspective, in my opinion, a moral leader thinks about his people or her people 3 years in advance. So where do you want to go 3 years from now? Where do you want to be 3 years from now? And let's make the changes for you to stay relevant. So you have to be paying attention to these trends. If you're thinking about it 3 months in advance, all you're writing is a pink slip. That's really all you're doing. And so a moral leader is looking 3 years in advance for their people. Do you agree with that?
That's brilliant. Love that.
We'll get back to the book in a minute, but I just want to share one story with you, and I think it'll illuminate the changes that are about to come for our audience. I read a biography of Helen Keller to my daughters, and the year before Helen Keller was born, I think it's 1869. No, it was a little later, but around that time. The year before she was born, the light bulb was invented. And the year after she died, Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. And so I like to share that story because that shows the progress that was made in just one human lifetime when change was slow. And so if you think about our lifetime, so you're about a decade older than I am, but my children and your children, what they're going to experience in their lifetime because of this acceleration of technology, because of virtual reality and AI and biotech advances and maybe quantum and maybe fusion. So I think that's really, really exciting from a human progress perspective, but very frightening from just a management of life perspective.
That's a great story. I was lucky enough to know Neil a little bit before he passed. Yuri Gagarin grew up in a mud hut that was half underground with no electricity.
And he's the first person in space, right? In the 50s, is that right? Or is that later?
Yeah,
the 60s?
The late 50s, early 60s, he was the first person to orbit the Earth.
Yeah. Right.